Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, and we're going to talk about Modiphius, and we're going to talk about Runehammer. So Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition is king. It's king of all tabletop role-playing games today. No two ways about it. It's not even close. I think we're still in the only question on Dungeons & Dragons is if it's beating the entire industry or not, right? It defeats all other tabletop role-playing games individually by leaps and bounds. The only question is, is Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition selling more than the entire industry, right, combined against it? But it does have competitors, and those competitors still matter because they always have the possibility of surpassing Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. And today I want to talk about two specific competitor companies, Runehammer and Modiphius. All right, so let's talk about Modiphius first. Modiphius is a big deal. They are by far the most successful international tabletop role-playing game company that is creating and distributing distinct individual tabletop role-playing games. A company that has their own tabletop role-playing games, has licensed tabletop role-playing games, has multiple tabletop role-playing games, all with core rule books and with source books. I think they may be one of maybe a half a dozen international publishers in the world that can do all that, right? And they have some major games. They have, and by the way, the reason why we're talking all about this today is I want to talk about what's happening in tabletop role-playing games with the physical book, right? What is happening with distribution? What is happening with the shape of the physical book? What is happening with print publishing in tabletop role-playing games today, in context to publishers competing with Wizards of the Coast, right? Who creates more physical tabletop role-playing game books? And I'm almost positive they make more than the entire industry combined. I definitely think that's the case, right? Please come at me if you think that's wrong. Give any evidence, but when it comes to print books, they are king. There's just no two ways about it. All right. So Modiphius, what are their games? They got some big ones. They got Star Trek. The official Star Trek tabletop role-playing game is created and distributed and by Modiphius. In addition to that, they do Conan, right? A major Conan, huge, right? Really big deal that they have that license. They have a few independent games as well. I think some Apocalypse Year Zero. I think it's called Mutant Apocalypse Year Zero is one of their other ones. But they have no less than a half a dozen games, and they are distributing, and they do an extremely good job. I should mention also Free League is in the mix. They do a good bit too, but I think Modiphius is pretty far ahead of Free League. And the other thing that's really, so you have Modiphius. They're a major printer. They're a major distributor. Now I'm getting confused. I'm thinking if Modiphius does. Modiphius just did Dune, right? So they are doing a lot of licensed product. So Modiphius just finished Dune, and that's a major new tabletop role-playing game book. So their books are incredibly high quality, amazing art, and they do multiple languages, right? So Modiphius is no joke, and they are an international publisher. Okay, so let's talk about Runehammer. Runehammer is almost like a one-man band. It's a smaller company. Actually, I do think they have, I think it's a one-man band, leading almost like Robin Hood and the Merry Men, right? I'm sure there's some merry women in. I know for a fact there's some merry women in there. Index Card RPG Ice Age is was created by a woman, I'm pretty sure. So basically, it's Hanker Farrow. The guy goes by a million names. He goes by Ingrid Bernal. He goes by Hanker Farrow. He goes by Brandish Gilhelm. It's all the same dude, and he makes Index Card RPG. He not only does he design it, but he also does the art, right? And it is pretty incredible. It's actually, in my opinion, Index Card RPG is a really incredibly unusual game. In that it is a better game from a design perspective than any game on the market, including Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, from a rules design perspective, it runs incredibly fast. It's simple, it's elegant, it's fast, it's all the things Dungeons & Dragons wish it was, but it's not a better game than Dungeons & Dragons. And the reason why is it lacks a ton of things that a lot of you guys think don't matter that really matter. It doesn't have merch, right? It doesn't have history. It doesn't have pop culture references. And it doesn't have 5 decades of design behind it, and it's not a part of American history. And I think a lot of people would like to say, well, Scott, TTRPG is just the rules, and you get your dice and you play with your friends, and history doesn't matter, and American and being an element of America doesn't matter, and merch doesn't matter, and art doesn't matter, and and I'm like, no, man, like the game is the game. It's everything, right? And this is why D&D is so hard to beat, right? Because history does matter, and 5 decades of momentum does matter, and being connected to a $1 billion toy company does matter, right? And so while the rules design, and frankly, in my opinion, even the art is better in Index Card RPG, it doesn't defeat Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, because Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition is connected to Americana, it's connected to culture, and those things do matter, right? And come at me in the comments if you think I'm wrong. And I already know it doesn't matter to me. Well, you don't win markets, right? Like if you could be right about your table. I don't really care about your table. I care about the aggregate. I care about the macro, right? I do care about your table in that I would like to make your table better by my content. So I do care from that content, but I'm a lot more concerned with the aggregate. I'm industry focused. I'm aggregate focused. Okay, I'm not like, oh, whatever's good for you and your table, or like you can get that nonsense at any other channel on YouTube. So what happened between Modiphius and Runehammer? Well, Runehammer is about to publish 2 major, actually 3. They're about, we'll keep it focused. They're about to publish 2 major books, right? So Index Card RPG's been around for like 5, maybe 6, 7 years, and it has really done a lot, right? So it came out as a fantasy. It came out as a game that had both a fantasy and a sci-fi setting in it. Since then, they've added an amazing, really strong comic book section, right? And then they also have some one-offs, they have a relic campaign, they have an Ice Age campaign, they have a Deadlands type campaign. And so what they're doing is they're doing the Index Card RPG Master Edition, and it's going to include everything. It's going to be like 400 pages long, and it's going to be incredible. Like if you buy this book, you're going to have an incredible amount of very cool, super fun, wonderful play, right? Now, again, you got to keep that to less than 51% of your play, and 51% of your play should be D&D 5th Edition, right? But it's okay to play, other games, right? Just as long as you're not doing it more than D&D, in my opinion. So when Ingrid Bernal needed to go get, right, the new, when he needed to publish this book and one more, which is Viking Death Squad, which is like a brand new, full freestanding tabletop role-playing game. When he needed to publish these, he's been publishing his own book for 6 or 7 years, right? But there's these weird, clearly lightning press nonsense, right? They're not the shape of a traditional Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition book. So when they go on your shelf, you got to make some weird, like his books sit literally under the My Little Pony box set on my shelf, right? Because they're not the same size as all the rest of the books, right? So I think a lot of people are like, this isn't a real tabletop role-playing game because it doesn't have the traditional shape, right? So he's fixing that, and Modiphius is bringing it, and Modiphius is going to put these books in traditional holders, right? And so both these books they're going to be exactly the same size and shape as a Dungeons & Dragons book, and they're going to be epic, right? And the print it's going to be beautifully printed, and they're going to be amazing, right? But here's the problem: none of this is happening in the U.S. So I think the sad lesson from all this is America doesn't care about tabletop role-playing games anymore. If you need a top-tier publisher, you can't get it in the U.S., right? And we have to realize Runehammer decided not to go with MCG games, right? And, it's just a thing. America really doesn't care about tabletop role-playing games at the macro level, and they do not care enough to really deliver a good print run. And that's sad. I think that's really sad, but it needs to be acknowledged. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think is the future of tabletop role-playing game print? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.